Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Hub Underground. Matt Dolloff here with Ty Anderson. As we are every single episode, I'm trying to take it easy on the microphone. The microphone can't handle me doing that voice when we're on remote time. But we are remote. I am in the bowels of Gillette Stadium in the media workroom. Ty is at parts unknown as we get into the latest on the Boston Bruins and the hockey world. Ty, how you doing today?
What is going on? Yeah, I'm coming to you live from the home base of Parts Unknown. Yeah, that's where I am tonight.
Absolutely. Quite a day. What a day. What a day. Quick story time, Ty. You saw my post on Instagram. The Worcester Palladium is, one of the more famous venues in the area for metal and hardcore shows. And I got to meet, I didn't really meet them, I guess, but I got to see Obituary, Metal Legends, up close and personal, off to the side of the stage. I'm gonna break. I guess I'll break my microphone here. The weirdest thing. It was funny. It got me. You forget these like metal bands are still like artists at the end of the day, even if they're yelling and screaming at you in their music. The singer for Obituary, John Tardy, I believe his name is, walks up, between the second to last band and his band. To set the scene, the side of the stage has this like ramp that the bands bring their equipment down to the ramp through this door to get out the building quickly. The door is closed, but the ramp's there. Singer for Obituaries between bands is walking up and down the ramp, warming up his metal growl. So he's just off to the side going as like a breathing exercise almost. I've never seen anything like it.
Oh yeah, no, you got to do all that.
You got to do that.
You got to.
It's like if Felger was off to the side going, "Absolutely sucks, absolutely sucks," over and over again, just to get his vocal cords ready. But that was one of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jordan from Terror, the band that played before them. He had the hookup. We got to meet. He actually knows my brother. My brother's one of the biggest hardcore fans you'll ever meet. I think I've told you about him. He goes all the way back to late 90s hardcore scene. So he knew some of the guys. Got to meet some of the guys in the other bands. It's just funny meeting these metal guitarists, hardcore singers, nicest people you will ever meet.
Oh yeah,
the nicest, friendliest guys. Hey, yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, nice. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, right on, dude. Yeah, nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And then he gets on stage, and it is the most violent, aggressive, terrifying music you'll ever hear in your life.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like the people that are not like that in the music scene, like they almost become known because they're not friendly, right? And they're dickheads because it's such an outlier to be like that. Typically, that when you are, people are like, "Fuck that guy." It's kind of funny how that works. Yeah,
that is funny. Yeah, like the most misunderstood people in entertainment, I would think. And like the singer for Terror mid-show, like mid-mosh pit is like, I don't know if something was actually happening, but he's like, "Hey, remember, no fighting, no tough guy shit, no fighting. We're all sharing in the same energy. We're all having a good time." And meanwhile, they're going the fastest, most aggressive music you'll ever hear. And Nails was the other band that I wasn't really familiar with.
Yeah,
but I met the singer Todd Jones, like nicest guy. And then he goes up, and it's just like, it's terrifying, but in like a beautiful, amazing way. If you're a metal hardcore fan, and so I went back and listened to some of their stuff. Like, I feel like that's the heaviest band I've ever heard in my life.
Nails.
Yeah,
probably up there.
They got to be in the conversation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all venue specific as well. Like in terms of like where you're seeing a band, like like I would say some of the heaviest bands that I've seen live are probably, seeing Harm's Way downstairs, Middle East was pretty loud. I would also say, Lorna Shore is probably the heaviest, hardest band that I've seen live. It was just so heavy. That's probably what I'm thinking. Like immediately, like where my mind goes to, like the loudest, heaviest band that I've seen, I'd probably put them up there. But yeah, I mean, the Palladium's good for like that genre. I hate going to Worcester, so I never go out there. But they are typically holding a lot of those. Yeah, no apologies. I hate Worcester. I'm not going out there.
Yeah, McCone came up. I was like, why is McCone all excited? Oh yeah, he's the Worcester guy. He's our resident Worcester person.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, but legendary venue for metal hardcore shows. One of the best music going nights of my life. Just like literally, like that was the first time that I was like on like sort of the VIP guest list, and you're literally on the stage watching the show from the other side as opposed to being. It was unbelievable experience. Thanks to Jordan from Terror for hooking that up, and hopefully we'll get back to doing that again sometime. Next time they come around or whatever. So that was good. Other than that, it was a normal weekend for me, and now we're back to work here. I know it's getting warm out. It's the summertime, but we're still talking ice hockey, Ty. It's starting to get real for the Boston Bruins. They're in the final stretches of the head coaching search. You can get the latest on that at 985thesportshub.com. It sounds like the announcement's imminent. Apologies in advance if I'm on vacation this weekend when it comes out, but I'm feeling early next week. We'll have the official news, or maybe someone will leak it. Maybe it'll be reported. There's at least one guy out there, Cam Robinson from Elite Prospects, saying he's hearing it's going to be Marco Sturm. So we'll see. But Marco Sturm is certainly sounding like a finalist for the job. You'd also put Mitch Love, who we talked about last week, and Jay Woodcroft, who we've also talked about on this podcast. No new names recently, but it feels like we're sort of narrowing it down to the finalists. And now that I've gotten to look more into these candidates, Ty, I am into the idea of Marco Sturm as the Bruins head coach. And I know that, like, reflexively, some people will have reactions like, it's just a guy that the Bruins know. They're familiar with him. Don Sweeney, knows Marco Sturm from back when he played, and like Bruin and Sweeney's early days in the front office and that whole thing, that whole connection. But to me, it goes beyond that. Sturm, has been in the LA Kings organization. He's had success with Team Germany. He's had success in the minors and the juniors. It feels like that's the thing that I like about Sturm from what I've read. Is like he's just had success. Like it feels like whatever situation he's been put in, he's done a good job. And the fact that he's developed sort of outside the Bruins organization is sort of like a best of both worlds situation for them, where he's really cut his teeth in other organizations and other teams in the hockey world, but he also has a little bit of familiarity where it's not a total outsider, it's not a total unknown as far as what the Bruins are getting into. They have an idea of what they're getting with Marco Sturm. So I'm warming to that idea. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that if you're looking at it like, okay, it's going to be Jay Woodcroft or it's going to be Marco Sturm, I'm taking Marco Sturm, and I feel that way. I don't know if I've outright said it. I don't know if our listeners have picked up on it. I'm not a Jay Woodcroft guy. I'm just not. I think you can kind of hide a lot of your deficiencies as a coach when you have two of the best 5 players in the world up front, and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Yep.
When I look at what got Jay Woodcroft fired, the defensive game, they were not good defensively. They were very leaky. He tried changing the defensive structure, and it was a nightmare. They were not good on the rush. Their goaltending was hung out to dry many times. There was a lot of weak side tap-ins, I remember, from when that team was struggling out of the gate. And they bring in Chris Knobloch, and they have Paul Coffey running the defense, and the defense is suddenly better, and it helps get them, further than they were going under Jay Woodcroft. And so if I'm looking at it in a vacuum of Woodcroft or Sturm, I'm going Sturm. I just think it makes more sense for what you want to be. And, not to get too bogged down in the nerd talk here of systems and structure, but, the Ontario Reign, they play a similar style to the LA Kings. It's their farm team. You want guys playing a similar structure. The LA Kings play a boring brand of hockey, but it's an effective brand of hockey that brought the best out of Darcy Kemper. You saw their defense. I thought their defense really, losing Drew Doughty for as long as they did, they were one of those classic, the group of 6 is better than any one guy, right? And I think the Bruins, they want to be that kind of team still. And so a guy like Marco Sturm makes sense in that regard, in my opinion. So if we're looking at it, it's this or that, I'm going Marco Sturm.
That's actually a great point that you go back all the way back to that April end of season press conference, Don Sweeney specifically mentioned the LA Kings in terms of, you look at how they, were so great on the defensive end and goals against, and like he still wants that to be sort of the Bruins foundation. And we still need to get into like how they're gonna, bolster the defense, reinforce the defense on that back end. But I do like the idea of like, yeah, the whole is greater than just any individual player. Like it's hard to have a great defense with just one great defenseman. You know what I mean? Like even when the Bruins had Zdeno Chara, they still had Dennis Seidenberg, Johnny Boychuk. They had guys that knew what they were doing out there. It wasn't just anchored by the one guy. And so we got to figure out the personnel side of that. But I wouldn't be surprised if based on Sweeney already having interest in how the LA Kings played, that he looks at Marco Sturm and like a guy that's been in that organization, and he finds that part attractive. And so it makes me wonder how Jay Woodcroft was getting these follow-up interviews. Like maybe he was sort of selling them on how he worked with the young players in Edmonton, which is like, to your point that you were just making, it's pretty easy to work with Connor McDavid. You put Connor McDavid on the ice and say go, and he can make things happen,
right,
regardless of who the coach is. So I'm curious about that. But it does, like, if it's Sturm, then that does signal that like they almost want to become LA East. Like they would sort of want to play that way, where it's heavy and hard to play against in that defensive end. And like you said, bringing out the best in Darcy Kemper could be great for Jeremy Swayman and Jonas Corposalo, especially a former King, by the way, if that holds true. And so, yeah, like I know you didn't get into too many details on how the Ontario Reign play, which we don't have to, but like, how would that look? Like defensively, structure wise, like how exactly would that look if the Bruins were to bring in, start to employ an LA Kings style of defense?
I mean, to keep it simple, you're limiting your high danger chances, right? You're limiting, there's a greater commitment. I would have to dive into more of like the film of the Ontario Reign, but like the LA Kings have been really good at limiting chances. I think now, and the other reason why I don't want to get too far deep into that is because I don't know what the staff is going to look like. I don't know if they're going to be allowed to bring, if it's Sturm, is he going to be allowed to bring his own people over? Is he going to be, or does he have to work with Jay Leach? And,
I wanted to get into that too. Like,
yeah,
like is he going to be forced to work with Joe Sacco and Jay Leach, or is he going to be able to have his own staff? That's a big question for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I'm that's something that I don't really want. Like I think that if you're bringing a new coach and you're saying, yeah, these are your guys, by the way, that's you're not empowering. You're like taking power away from your coach right off the bat. That's a bad idea. And it was a point of contention towards the end with Jim Montgomery, it felt like. So
I would sort of hope they've learned their lesson in that regard. At this
you would think, right? But like they like Jay Leach, so maybe they look at it and go, "No, you can get rid of everyone else, but like Jay Leach is our guy. We like him." Keep in mind too that Chris Kelly really started in a front office role for the Bruins. He transitioned back into coaching, which is what he did with the Kings. I'm not the Kings. I'm sorry, the Senators. But really, Kelly was an assistant coach with, I think, the Oilers too, or the Ducks. I can't remember. Before Ottawa, I want to say. I might be wrong there. Anyways, doesn't matter. No, but like, you got to let your new head coach put his imprint on the team and on the staff. Out of the gate, you'd hope. And so, we'll see what happens there. But that's why I don't want to get too deep into that. But like Jay Leach, ran a system in Seattle where, again, you look at their defense, it was Larson, Vince Dunn, Jeremy Lauzon, and you're like, oh, okay, they're okay, but they were pretty stout. They were pretty tough to go against. They would try to win games 2-1, 3-2, and they actually had a little bit of success doing that for a hot minute there. But yeah, the Kings, I just think they play a really great lockdown. Like the thing I remember about the Kings this year is watching them play. Like once they got the lead, and if they were on home ice, it was hard to beat them, man. It really was. Like they just knew how to play lockdown D. Now, was that the complete same case in Ontario? I'm not 100%, and see a lot of rain games, not going to lie to you. However, what I will say is that, PK, they were great. Not a lot of leaks. Power play left something to be desired, and that's the biggest thing, I think. Like, we're talking about what it could be, right? Like, if they hire Marco Sturm, we're talking about what it could be. The thing that I'd worry about with Marco Sturm, the power play. When he came over from Team Germany to join the LA staff as an assistant, they gave him the power play. It was abysmal. It was not a great power play. This past year in Ontario, their power play, not that great. I think it was actually the worst in their division. So that's something got to work on there. But like you to bring it on home, to bring it to the central point, you would be embracing being a defensive-minded team. That is what you'd be saying with a hire like that. You'd want to be a bit more. You want to commit yourself to what you envisioned it being last year. Like, you're going to double down on what you thought you were last year, it feels like, in a way.
Yeah, no, it feels like that's the direction they're going regardless, because Mitch Love was a guy that worked with the defense in Washington this past year, and it feels like he did a good job there. Jay Leach, like you just mentioned, I'm not sure about Woodcroft. Like, is he a power play guy? Again, like, not to harp on it over and over again, but like, it feels like it's hard to. He's sort of hard to gauge, because it's like you had McDavid and Draisaitl.
Right.
That's a pretty solid strategy. The having McDavid strategy. So I don't know what else.
Have you tried having good players?
Yeah, no, exactly. Just the old players.
The old 2000, the old 2000 Yankees approach of just getting all the good players.
Yeah, no. Have you tried just spending the most money and having all the good players?
That's what Florida's doing right now. They're looking all right.
Seems viable. Yeah. What the hell? How do they pull that off? Crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of, I don't know. Like, Florida is Florida, man. You like the report that Mitch Marner wants to go there? It's like, oh, of course. Wow, he wants to go to places where there's no taxes. That's great.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's like, okay, Florida, Texas.
I think the report, I forget who it was exactly, but it was like, Mitch Marner's interested in going to Vegas, Tampa, Dallas, or Florida. It's like, oh, wow. What a shock. Those four cities, huh?
No, absolutely flabbergasted. He doesn't want to play in Canada, Massachusetts, or California. Someone reported, I don't have it in front of me, like the Bruins and Kings are showing interest. It's like, okay, well, is Marner showing interest in you? Probably not.
Right. Yeah. The more I think about it, by the way, the more I kind of play around on some of these team generators and stuff like that, the more unlikely I think it is that they even get involved in a guy like Marner, because they need like 3 or 4 wingers, right? Like, I think they need probably 3 or 4 wingers and a defenseman. So like, you can't give a guy $13 million. No. You just can't. I mean, even 8 is going to make it kind of tricky. Like, if they get in on Besser or Ehlers, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, even that. Like, you got your high price right winger. I'm okay with trying something else there. You do need depth anyway. You need depth in this league more than anything. And so
you need talent.
Throwing all your money at Mitch Marner is not going to, really solve anything. Everything. I mean.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So, I mean, I don't know. Not to harp on the tax thing again, but I guess, well, maybe like when the Marner news hits, he signs with Florida. Like, everyone will be like, all right, enough of this. I'm fed up with this tax stuff. We got to figure out something different. I don't know exactly when the next CBA is, but that's something they can figure out there, because it's going to be tough having all the good players going to Florida, Dallas, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that does feel like we're just going further and further down that road. Not to get on that tangent, but yeah, the Bruins do need players. But some of their existing players, Ty, they had themselves a good couple weeks there at the Worlds. Team USA won the Worlds for the first time in 91 years, 92 years.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a typo.
No,
I can't believe they even had the tournament that back then.
Yeah, it was kind of wild that they used to have it. Like, I don't even, like, they take a boat. What do? They go over on boat. They had
they got to ride a canoe up to Canada. Crazy.
Yeah, I don't, and I think like Great Britain was one of the frequent winners or frequent participants in that tournament. Maybe that's how they got Byron Dafoe into goaltending in the first place. His great grandparents were big into hockey in the 1930s.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. That is crazy. Yeah, it is kind of funny when you think about it, how that never really panned out, hockey in the UK.
I do love the video.
Gold and gray over there,
We can't talk about it on the pod because of the language. They ever see the clip of the pregame? It was at the Worlds. It was like the UK, the Great Britain team captain, like holding court with the players in a circle right around the net, and all the words he's dropping about the team they're going against. It's very funny. If you can find like Great Britain tonight, and you can clearly hear the captain saying like, "Let's take it to these," and he says a word we can't say on this podcast. It's kind of amazing, honestly. Go find it.
It's kind of word we wouldn't even say in real life anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Mean.
Yes, exactly.
I would probably need subtitles. I'm ashamed that I need subtitles on like a thick British accent or Scottish.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at understanding them. I will close my eyes sometimes and see if I can like listen to everything word, and I'm always impressed. I'm like, wow, I picked up everything perfectly.
Yeah, maybe that's how I gotta practice like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the Team USA, they won Worlds. Jeremy Swayman, huge part of that. Shutouts. I don't know like how much you can connect that to him being better for the Bruins, but I mean, it's got to be an indication that like if you're just out on Swayman, if you think Swayman's this just not good, like I always thought you were wrong about that. I think that is, in my opinion, incorrect. That Swayman is just not good. Obviously had a terrible year last year. He's got a lot of things that he needs to do better. The team around him needs to be better. It feels like they were maybe doomed from the start last year, the way that whole thing was going with the contract and all that. The contract is what it is. I think the Bruins are stuck with it at this point. I feel like there's really no sense going back and continuing to harp on the contract and the fact that he sucked last year. Time to move forward at some point. Feels like Jeremy Swayman is moving forward. I just hope that he can carry that World's performance into Boston, into that locker room, and things can sort of fix themselves. And, maybe the only way he can sort of fix it is by just playing better, having a full training camp and all that. But do you think this is sort of, at least not a full vindication, but at least sort of a half vindication for Jeremy Swayman to come out on top at the Worlds and show that like I can still be a really good goaltender, and hopefully I'm going to be that for the Bruins.
Yeah, I think it's ending his horrible season on a high note. Like he did not have a great season. We all acknowledge that. He had pockets of play that were pretty good, and pockets where he didn't. And I think even this tournament, you could say that he had those kind of pockets, right? Like he's entering the semifinals of that tournament, I think, with like an 898, but then he has a 27 of 29 and a 25 save shutout in the gold medal game. And so, I do put extra stock in those games because I do think that there's a possibility here that when the lights shine brighter, Swayman ups his game a little bit, right? And like I'm not trying to excuse the bad season, but like when you're not playing for anything, maybe it's harder to get up for those games. I thought just like in the 2024 playoffs, he was at his best when the team needed it, right? And so I think that you look at that, you look at the performance when the games mattered in that tournament. He's 7-0-0, but those final two games bump him up from like an 899 or whatever it was to a 921. Like he got better as the tournament went on and as the games mattered more. And so I do put stock in that. I do put stock in him potentially being a goalie that, all right, let's get the regular season numbers sorted out here a little bit. Let's ease back a little bit on the number of starts. And then let's see how you look in the playoffs. Because if you're a money goalie in the playoffs, I got to be honest with you, Matt, I don't give a shit if you're a 903 in the regular season. I just don't care. I don't care. If you're money in the postseason and you just get me in there with a 905, that's okay with me. I'm okay with that because I think that there are goalies that are like that. Like Sergei Bobrovsky does not have great regular seasons anymore, but he has electric playoffs. He's been really good in the playoffs for like 3 years in a row now, despite having, not horrible, but also not like, oh my God, 930. This guy's unbelievable kind of regular seasons.
Yeah, and again, like if they win, it doesn't really matter how much money he's making, how it looks, the numbers, none of that stuff matters. Just win the games and win them however you can. And so you got to hope that they can get back there. Hopefully it is better than 903, Ty, though, especially if they hire a defensive-minded head coach and they focus on locking down the defense. Mm-hmm. Hopefully the numbers do get better than that. Especially, we're not sure exactly who's going to be putting the puck in the net at the offensive end for the Bruins. But I do hope that, the regular season is better. can't possibly be worse, but hopefully it's like markedly better is probably the way I should put it. Hopefully, at least numbers wise, he's like a top 10 goalie, and then we'll see how it goes in the playoffs. And that's the other thing is that like the workload is probably something they got to work on, and the $8 million, like people are gonna say like I can't believe you're paying a guy $8 million to only play 48 games or whatever the hell it is. I just feel like that's the era we're going into. Like the highest paid guys are going to be the highest paid guys. And the guys that are the workhorses, they usually come up short and fizzle out and run out of gas anyway. We saw that with Connor Hellebuck. Hellebuck was, arguably fortunate to even get out of the first round, with that crazy comeback at the very end by Winnipeg there. So I think we're sort of going into that's going to be the norm, where like goalies are going to play less in the regular season. And they're still going to, even the highest paid guys are going to be playing less in the regular season. I feel like that's just where we're going.
We also have to, I said 903. There's an article in the Washington Post a little while ago talking about this, but like the average save percentage in the NHL this past season was 900. That was the average. It was the lowest in like 20 something years, right?
Yeah, I would have thought that's below average, 900.
It's funny because last season it was 901. So it continues to trend downward because we're entering this era now of the increased power plays, the analytics telling guys where to shoot pucks and where to get your best opportunities, the video scouting, all of that. So that continues to kind of trend downwards, right? So like we also at the same time, while acknowledging the price of goaltending going up, we have to acknowledge that a great season now might be at 915. It might be a 912. It might not be the 925s and 930s that you saw when Hank and when Tuukka and Rene were winning their Vezinas. Like this might be a little bit different.
Can't get hung up on the actual number. Is what you're
exactly.
saying.
Right. And so that's been the really interesting part, right? Goaltending is voodoo. I think we all acknowledge that it can be this, it can be that. But like I do think like it's kind of interesting that the average save percentage 10 years ago, the league average was 915. In a span of 10 years, it's gone down 15 points. Now, if you have a 908, like that's probably a good season now. Like that's kind of weird to think about, but that's kind of the way it's trending right now. You got your Igors, your Hellebucks, and then those next guys. Like if you get anything from a 910 to a 920, like you're probably feeling pretty good about what you're getting out of your goaltending.
That's crazy to think about. Yeah. I sort of have to get out of that mentality because that's what I grew up with.
Same.
I grew up with guys being at a 186 and a 930, and that's like, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everyone else is like dominant.
But like I think you think about the playoffs and like you kind of see how it's unfolding that way in the postseason where, you're able to erase leads. Look at that Dallas and Edmonton game 1. Like that's an example of kind of where the game is trending now. It's way more, as Doc Emmerich would say, helter skelter, back and forth. Here we go. Like way more than it ever has been in years past. Although these playoffs blow, by the way, these are not good playoffs. come say it right now. These playoffs suck. It's the third year in a row. Where the product's gotten worse as the games have gotten more important, which is not a good thing for your league. But I digress.
It's funny. Like Florida and Carolina is the 4 versus the 5 if you went 1 through 8 in the conference. So clearly it should have been a first round matchup, which is funny to think about. Dallas and Edmonton closer to top teams playing at the end, but it feels like that's Edmonton's series at this point. They're at 3-1 and they should have won the game 1. They blew game 1. So it's like feels like we're headed for that rematch, Ty.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about Edmonton in the rematch?
I mean, Edmonton looks good. They lost Zach Hyman for the rest of the postseason. So that's going to be a big loss. But they're a deep team, man. You look at their list of scratches, and you're like, whoa, when did they get all those guys? So they are as deep as they've probably ever been in this McDavid Draisaitl era. I would argue. It also, again, it just helps when you can just put any bum to the right of McDavid and Draisaitl and watch them score goals left and right. Like Corey Perry looks like the 50 goal scorer Corey Perry playing with those guys, and
Perry looked great last night. I was like, that's Corey Perry? Oh, crap.
Yeah, Scorey Perry is back in business, ladies and gentlemen.
Guy's 90.
No, but I still think Florida is going to win. I think that you look at Edmonton's. I don't hate their defense, but like I just see Bouchard and Nurse and Kulak getting absolutely obliterated by this Florida forecheck. I think that Dallas. I think bit more skating legs, bit more able to get up and out, a bit more able to handle the punishment that could come. I think Thomas Harley's been very good for Dallas in the postseason, or he was up until this third round. So I just think that Florida's got all the weapons. I mean, Jesus, you look at Florida, man. They got their top three lines have all factored in like significantly in their scoring, right? They got 4 defensemen that have put up at least 5 points. They got Nico Mikkola activating the offensive zone, creating goals. Like they are a nightmare every time they're on the ice. Like no matter what line they're deploying, they're getting production. That's real. That's what makes you a true Stanley Cup threat. Like I go back to like those 2011 Bruins. Like once they had it, so that third line was Kelly, Peverly, and Ryder. They were unstoppable. Like it was just like, wow, now you got balance all over the sheet, and that's what makes a legit championship contender is like you got to have that balance, right? Like that's what undid the Bruins in 2019. They had one line and then they got hurt. All 3 of them got hurt, and it was like, all right, well, now you're screwed. Have fun, it's you need to have 3 lines going, right? And the Panthers have 3 lines and their entire defense going right now, which is super impressive.
Yeah, like we've talked about it before about the Panthers. It's not just that they have a great collection of talents, that they all fit together so well, and they have such a good balance between the forward lines and the defense and whatever. It's all the pieces fall into place so perfectly with that team. It's very frustrating because they are not likable at all, and they're very unlikable and also very, very, very good. And it feels like we're looking at a Florida repeat 3 straight years in the Cup final. I don't even remember the last time like a team even did that, which would be great. 3 straight years in the Cup final, 2 cups in a row.
Well, Tampa, but you got to count the bubble. So are you pro counting the bubble or are you anti-bubble?
Asterisk. Put an asterisk on it.
Yeah. I don't knock the accomplishment, but I do knock that's different than going back to back to back because you did have like a 3-month sabbatical in there, basically.
That's true. Yeah. This is more impressive, I think.
Yeah.
You got back to the full real hockey experience in 2022 and Tampa lost to Colorado.
Yes.
So
yes.
Mm-hmm. And the 2021, especially when they changed all the divisions and everything like that. That to me was especially a wonky season.
Did the Devils do it? They did 2 in a row. Because Buffalo made it in 99, right?
Oh, the Devils, the 90s. Yeah, they won in 95, and then they lost to Colorado.
They lost to Colorado, but they beat Anaheim. Was that 2 years in a row?
No, I can't remember. They beat Anaheim in 03.
Yeah, okay. And then 02 was Carolina.
2000, they beat Dallas. 2001, they lost to the Avs. But then 2002 was Detroit.
Carolina.
We're doing real old hockey nerd stuff.
Yeah.
There's a couple dudes talking, just naming old hockey players.
Dude, I could do this all day. Slava Kozlov.
Vladimir Konstantinov.
You know what
Draper.
You know what people sleep on? And I fell down the wormhole because I was watching an old game. People forget how freaking good Marian Hossa was. Oh my God, what a player! What an absolute tank of a player! And he kind of bounced around a little bit, right? He was in Ottawa, right?
Yep.
He was in Atlanta.
Yep.
And then he goes from Atlanta to Pittsburgh. No, Atlanta to Pittsburgh, then to Detroit, then to Chicago. Like he had that kind of 4-year stretch there where he was kind of all over the place. But my God, what a player. Marian Hossa, one of my first like nerd loves as a hockey fan.
He was kind of like Alexander Barkov before Barkov was Barkov. Except he played wing, I know, but like he was that two-way force.
Yeah, just unbelievable. How did he end up in Atlanta from Ottawa? Oh, Danny Heatley?
Yeah, Danny Heatley. for Marian Hossa was the trade.
Yep.
And wasn't he on Detroit? I forget the order, but like he lost the cup and then went to the other team the next year between Pittsburgh and Detroit, something like that.
Yeah, no, he went to
and lost both times.
At first, he went from Atlanta to Pittsburgh because I remember the trade wasn't all that impressive. It was like Colby Armstrong, like a first-round pick, and they had this guy. The Penguins did. They had this prospect like it's like D'Angelo Esposito. I'm gonna look this up now.
Angelo Esposito. That sounds familiar.
Angelo Esposito. He was supposed to be like when he was coming up. He was like, "This kid's gonna be incredible."
He was like hyped.
He was crazy hyped because his first year into Quebec, as like a 16, 17-year-old, whatever it was, like he put up 100 points in 50 games or something like that. Yeah. And everyone thought he was going to be the future, but he was nothing. But he was like the centerpiece of the trade and like didn't end up playing. I don't even know if he ever made the NHL, honestly. I don't think he did.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, my Italian friends were excited about him. I remember.
Yeah. Gorlami. Dominic DeCoco. That's what he was. Yeah, no, that was a trade. So I just pulled it up now. Marian Hossa and Pascal Dupuis traded to the Penguins for Colby Armstrong, Eric Christensen, shootout specialist Eric Christensen, Angelo Esposito. I thought it was D'Angelo. Sorry about that. And a round one pick in 2008 who, looking at this name, never made the NHL. Yeah, no, he did not. So
that's what it was. Yeah, so he was on the Penguins in 2008. They lost to Detroit.
And then he goes
jumped ship to Detroit, and then Pittsburgh beats Detroit in the Cup final the next year.
Yes.
Yeah, good job, Hossa. It's a good call.
Not great. Not ideal.
All right, that was a fun hockey tangent. I got one more person that I want to talk about before we get out of here, Ty.
Yeah.
That would be Elias Lindholm, who also had a huge Worlds for Team Sweden. They got the bronze. He was a huge part of that. I think it was 14 points in 10 games, something like that. So maybe he's still got something left in the tank. I thought a really weird season for him last year. I don't know if he was like playing through, something that, sort of healed itself over time during the season. It wasn't really bothering him at the end because I thought he looked pretty good at the end. After they sold off all their pieces, but tough first season for him in a Bruins uniform. Another guy that I feel like they're stuck with on that contract. I know like the contract might sort of bear out as not quite as expensive as it feels right now with the cap going up and, guys making almost twice as much money. But like they really, really need him to, be a legit top six guy for them, whether he's at center or whether they want to move him to wing. I thought it was promising to see him put together some offense for them because we know he could be a two-way guy. But they really need him to, get his shot going, depending on who he plays with, whether they put him back with Pasternak or whatever. Like they really need him to be a legit guy for them. And so it was good. It was just good to see him actually, perform on that stage.
Yeah. Big finish to his year. I thought NHL and then the Worlds. I know people don't want to go too crazy on the Worlds, obviously, because it's like kind of the loser bracket, it's like kind of like the NIT in a lot of ways. Right. But he went. He was on the fence about going, but he went and he had the second most points, to your point, behind David Pasternak, the only guy who had more points during that tournament. So, all things considered, a great showing for him, and you want to see more of that. And I think I've said it on this podcast before, or I've written it before, but like if he fits with Pasternak, that's one less thing you have to worry about, just across the board. That he's going to put up 65 points if he can gel with Pasternak for 82 games, and you'll take that. I mean, listen, if my alternatives here, and yeah, you don't necessarily love an almost $8 million player being a Pasternak, embed, so to speak, and needing Pasternak to be successful. But at the same time, if my options are it's either that or he's David Backes 2.0, I'm picking the former. I think anyone with a brain is. And so I do think that, like when I look at Lindholm's year as a whole, it's kind of difficult to say that he had a downright bad year because he did have some really good defensive plays and he was coming through with some face-off wins and, all that, the good stuff, right? The stuff that you don't notice as much. But if you can get that and the point production that you got in the final month plus of the season, like you'll be happy. you'll be happier with that player than you were this past season. So I also do think, and I've said this before, I've noticed this before, the Bruins are trying to make the David Pastrnak and Elias Lindholm connection first happen when they were getting arguably the worst version of David Pastrnak we've seen in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. So Pastrnak found his game, obviously, late in the year, and then Lindholm was succeeding with him. And so try that again and see if those guys can pick up where they left off. And if they do, okay, and you keep Morgan Geekie there, okay, you don't have to worry about that line at all. Like, you don't have to, like, that line will score. They'll be productive. It'll be good for you.
I was going to say, like, Geekie isn't a true top line wing by any means, but if you put him next to Lindholm, Pastrnak, you might be able to make that work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's the same kind of concept of, like, was Zach Hyman a first line wing? No, but he became one by playing with Connor McDavid.
Right.
They
kind of have to have something like that with the way the roster is right now.
Right. Like, you look at Austin Matthews, the way that he propped up Michael Bunting. Is Michael Bunting a top line wing? No, but he was with Austin Matthews. Like you have to do that when you have a star player making $11 million a year. Like, you don't have another option. You can't say, okay, this guy makes $11 million. Let's put another $11 million player with him. Like, you can do it when you need to, but it's not going to be sustainable, in terms of, like, how you get the most out of your roster, your 20-man roster every night. Like, you got to have that balance. And so if Pastrnak makes those two guys better, that's 3 less things the Bruins have to worry about when it comes to building their roster.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, like that's a kind of a developing take that I'm thinking about. Like, they need Pastrnak to, just elevate whoever's next to him. And that's going to be part of the equation next year. Because they're probably not realistically not going to fill out a true top 6 group in one offseason. But plenty of work to be done. The first domino to fall is going to be the new head coach. That's hopefully coming, within the next week or so, maybe this weekend. We'll see how that all shakes out. But any closing thoughts for us today, Ty?
Nope, I got nothing.
Good, because I need to go to OTAs. All right, if you made it this far, thanks. I love you. This is the Sports Hub Underground. One more time, I'm Matt Dolloff. He's Ty Anderson. He's Ty Anderson.
I am
on this side.
Mm-hmm.
I get so mixed up by the stupid mirror image on the StreamYard. All right, thanks for listening, folks. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts. You can, of course, get us right here on YouTube if you're watching on video. If you're listening on audio, you probably got us on Apple Podcasts. You might get us on Spotify. But wherever you want to listen, wherever you want to watch or listen, you can get us on all those platforms. You can get every episode at 985thesportshub.com and the Sports Hub app. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.